we have a waterfall with some flowing water. And one of the most important things when you were deciding where to put a tent in the ancient world was a water source. If you didn't have water, or you didn't have access to water, within a few days you would be dead. You could not survive out in the desert without water. The most ideal water was a flowing stream like this because it would never stagnate, it was always fresh, and it usually had some sort of plant or trees or something around it to give you shade and protection as well. So if people could find a living stream of flowing water, that would be the most precious thing that they could do, and often they would stay around there for a while until all the grazing lands had been used up and then they would move on. If they couldn't find water like this, they would move to somewhere where they could dig a well. The next most reliable source of water was a well. You might remember again in the stories of Abraham that he and Lot were out in the desert and they drilled lots of wells. The wells that they had discovered in Israel can be anywhere between 90 and maybe 120, even 150 feet deep. So if you could imagine having to go down and scoop out the dirt and rock and everything down to that depth, down a little hole like this, it just gives you some idea of the sort of tasks that people were doing at that time. The wells were also a popular meeting place for the women. Remember I said that the men got their information from travelling shepherds and people that were travelling around. The women, if there were wells around, the women would come to the well in the morning or at night time, and they would meet other women, and the women would share information about what was happening in all the different places that were around the well. And so they weren't left out of the information loop. There was still that discussion going on. And then they would have gone back and they would have talked to the men, and the men would have told them what they had learnt from the other men, and so communication was happening. There are a lot of stories related to wells, and the story of the servant going to get a wife for Isaac is an amazing one. Can you remember what the servant ended up deciding that would make an ideal wife? How he was going to know whether the person that came along was the right one?
Water his camels.
Water, how many camels? 10 camels? Yeah, 10 camels and a servant to be watered. How many gallons of water do you reckon a thirsty camel would have drunk? Anything between 20 and 30 gallons of water. Now, if you were a person getting water at the well, you would use either probably not a metal bucket, but you would add a pottery vessel, or you would have had a wineskin like, or an animal skin like in that container there. And you wouldn't have wanted it to be too big, because if you were hauling it up 120, 150 feet, you'd get really sore arms if it was heavy. So now I'm going to put this bucket down the well, and I'm going to get some children to pull us up some water. It's a pretty heavy bucket, isn't it? Oh, there's quite a bit of water in there, that's good. Now put the water in the little trough over there. Now, you do that another 119 times and you've watered one camel.
Wow.
Now you've got 10 camels to water. That's a lot of work, isn't it? You have a go-to. Yep. Have you ever read that story and with that sort of thought in your mind as how long it might have taken her to actually get the water? A lot of water.
What would the typical size container, the goat skin, is how many gallons would that be? About one?
I would say you might have 3/4 of a gallon in one of those.
Okay.